Day 5 of huffing huge amounts of copium and feeling pretty lethargic, run over, bamboozled, brain fog setting in, and general synapses are feeling pretty cloudy. What's good, my fellow peasants? How you doing? Just came away from doing a massive lore soak on Final Fantasy 16 that has left me in a unique place. And I want to share it with you guys, specifically around Joshua. Well, this is going to be a lot to riff out, guys, but if any of you saw me and Brianna covering this 1 hour Clive lives or dies scenario, in that, no, go check it out, but quick summary, we more or less spoke about the Clive lives scenarios, because that's the one that you have to kind of reach for, absorb a lot of supplementary material, go back to quests and piece it all together, the symbolic weaves and themes that hint at Clive being alive, because of course the game leads us emotionally, but wait, and where we are led as players is to believe in all three of some of the best characters in video games and in Final Fantasy that we've had. Joshua, Dion and Clive were all dead, and like you saw in that video, guys, if you saw it, I say it, I hated the ending of 16. I'm not entirely as hateful as I was when I first finished it, but I did not like it, man. The ambiguous ending, the dropped plot threads, the very surface level D-class villain, the pacing of it, the lack of a final dungeon, 1,000,001 reasons why I thought that was such a weak ending. And no, a lot of people kind of called me out on that. They were like, yo, Pez, you kind of say that Final Fantasy 7 is your favourite Final Fantasy, and that has just as ambiguous an ending. So why is that your favourite? Because an ending isn't everything. My entire hate or love of a game isn't entirely contingent on the ending, and that's for two reasons. Because endings are really powerful, the resolution to things, but also like what I'm having to do here now, and like I did with 7, is there's an opportunity for you, the player, to go away and explore and broaden and deepen your POV. I'm sure that's why some of you have clicked on this video now to see what I've got to say about Joshua. Is he alive? This is going to be a two-parter, because I'm just going to say it straight out the gate. I do believe we're going to be getting a DLC, a Joshua Rossfield DLC that's going to be covering... Actually, I'm not going to spoil what I think it's going to be covering. I'll just save that to part 2. And yeah, guys, I do... I fully acknowledge that part of my belief of this, I'm huffing copium, but not the kind of copium that a lot of people were accusing me of. That I didn't like the ending of 16, or a lot of people who don't like the end of 16. I hear a lot, and I see a lot of people say, oh, it's because you can't deal with characters dying. You need to go and make a bunch of nonsense because you can't deal with characters dying. Again, my bias coming away in this is that all of them died. I do not have a bias for them living. I said predominantly, and I was going to release a second video, the Clive dies aspect, but honestly, on retrospect and after absorbing all this lore, I'm just going to put that in the trash, because frankly, it doesn't add a whole lot of extra. I went into some of the themes and the symbolism, some of the language. Clive himself, after he got the power bottom, was saying, oh shit, this vessel can't actually hold all this power after all, as well as just giving my opinion on why I think Clive dying is a much more powerful ending than the Lives one, which, like I said in the last video, I do think it is a subtraction from it. So me now coming out with Joshua Lives, which I imagine kind of getting a little bit convinced. This 2 days ago to me was the most inconceivable thing, that Joshua lived and Clive died. The book, penned by Joshua Rossfield, titled Final Fantasy, I didn't entirely believe that, Clive lived and he put down the pen, like the Hippocrates quest said, and he did it in his brother's legacy. I thought maybe the Undying did it, or Yote. Would be curious how they came up with the name Final Fantasy. But basically any other option than the obvious. That Joshua wrote it. Joshua actually did all the book of Final Fantasy. Those kids are reading far off in the future, which I know some people think Joshua is just potentially a self-insert. I just saw that Maximilian dude, he finished his playthrough as well like a day ago, and he came away with that conclusion. It's just a fantastical story that some boy wrote and inserted, and this was the real world, and we were never in the real world, which I think is a bit strange, considering Clive, he also authors, he narrates to us, he narrates the opening, this is the beginning of the journey, at the end, and thus our journey ends. I can understand why people think it's the fantastical story. And none of it actually happened. I just think that is lazy and doesn't add anything of value. I really don't. I think that's pointless. I will quickly spoil for later in the video. I do think possibly guys, I'm going to drop the big bomb that they could be the reincarnation of Joshua and Clive, those little kids. I even think, I'm actually just going to have Bree confirm this, if it was the mother in that ending. Somebody said it's Annabella's VA, and they didn't even go to any lengths to hide or change up her voice that it was Annabella's VA. I'm just going to confirm that because I'm VA deaf, so I can never I can never tell. All right, Bree, can I give you some homework?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Can you quickly go find out if that woman's voice at the end is Annabella?
Okay.
See what you think. Okay, I've set Bree on the research, because that'd be pretty wild, and it just ties with this idea I've got. Let's get straight into it. Why I was initially totally against the idea that Joshua was alive. It seemed so unlikely to me that he lived and Clive died, or both of them lived. Again, all of it is Schrodinger's cat, either or possibility, that Yoshi P and the team will never ever confirm to us. So what I thought. Now, the longer I've sat with it and the more I've researched into Joshua, exactly what happened there, and thought about it and marinated, and I gotta say, guys, most of you have, of course, been at the nexus point of these theory craftings like 3 weeks or almost a month back. Streamers like me and Max, you know, we're only finishing the story like around about now, so we're very late to the train. As we know, Joshua confirmed to us back in the Sid arc, back at Drake's head when he died, that the Phoenix cannot raise someone from death. I think Joshua said that if he'd been there a few moments earlier, there's a chance he could have healed Sid, but no chance to actually bring him back. And I mean, that's always been the case in the series, right? Phoenix Down has only ever recovered people from knockout. That's why we couldn't bring Aerith back. Phoenix Power doesn't actually work that way. So that's why my main interpretation, when obviously Clive and Joshua, they had that beautiful speech, half that speech hijacked with Joshua trying to explain once again, like, here's a bit of Ultima lore, don't forget who Ultima is. As I'm not going to forget, he's fucking boring. And then just that really beautiful, powerful moment. Now, that's the thing with the ending, as much as I'm roasting on it, guys, I just want to be clear, there was a lot of beautiful, well written, staged, emoted. The cinematography was obviously very, very beautiful. There were definitely beautiful ingredients, beautiful parts. Just the whole structure and shell of it was ugly and rushed, in my opinion. But yeah, like Joshua hugging Clive. Always been proud to have you as my shield. Like being my brother. God damn! Oh, the emotional damage is still here 5 days later. Emotional damage. Clive's there and he's saying to Joshua to hold on, and like Joshua says, it's too late, my body's too far gone. If this wound, just like we thought was going to happen after Joshua caged one of the 16 Ultimas in his chest, we said it was going to burst out alien style, and it happened. It was more like an exorcism, to be honest. It was very freaky, very harrowing. Burst out of his chest and he said, yeah, if this wound doesn't get me, the curse will get me. And we saw Joshua die, you know, when his arm flopped. Some people say, nah, he's just unconscious. Like, that's 100% fact. He was only unconscious. No, the emotional weight has to count for something. For something. You know, in the Clive's alive scenario, it's like, well, so you're saying like Gav and Jill's tears and Torgal's howls meant nothing. In this scenario, if Joshua lives, it's that gut punching, like heart-wrenching howl that we heard from Clive, like Ben started just killing on that emotion, meant nothing. His brother was just unconscious. No, he was dead. And that's why I assumed when Clive did the healing on his chest, it was just because he saw a massive hole, like anyone would, in someone they love. When you do burial rites, you see a hole where your brother's heart is, something that you've cherished dearly. You just want to close that up. And that was my interpretation. The Phoenix, even though Joshua just passed it to Clive, that they weren't healing him, they weren't rezzing him. It was just an action done almost instinctively out of love and affection for his brother. But of course, that is not the only ingredient. Clive had also obviously got Ultima's power at that point. And what do we know about Ultima? Well, this necrotic-ass Joe Biden-looking mofo for thousands of years has been trying to do one of two things. Resurrect his kin, of which we know this was a very confusing element, but there is a race of Ultimas, and they did have a civilization, they did have a nation. They even had airships, and they had cities that were basically the Apoditories, and the children of Zemeckis, the Fallen, more or less replicated everything that the Ultimas had created, civilization-wise. Have you got some... Oh, Bree's back. You got some info?
I listened to it.
Yep.
Very extensively.
Is it Annabella?
It sounds just like her.
It is Annabella.
I think it is.
Oh!
I tried to get like a verified thing.
Yep.
I
You
haven't
couldn't.
been able to find it yet.
So you've just had to go on hearing.
Has my husband never tired of telling me? Have you been reading that silly story again? He is a fine soldier. Magic belongs in fairy tales, and fairy tales don't boil kettles.
So the woman with the kids, who are black-haired and blonde-haired with a bork, they are playing, and they like the Saint and Sectary, just like Clive does. The mother is Annabella's voice.
It's very, very likely. I'd say I'm like 96% positive.
Fantasy and reality are blurring. I got a feeling I know what it is.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think there's some reincarnation shit going on.
It seems like
I think there is. I think they are reincarnated. I think that what happened with Joshua, I'm just going to drop my big wad right now. I don't think that Clive healed his body, you know, with that phoenix power. I think he did something funky with Joshua's soul. And with something that we are yet to see, and maybe in a DLC.
I like how you said drop my wad.
That was my wad. My wad was spirit bodies.
Spirit wad.
Spirit wad. Spirit wads are big, man. Spirit wads are exactly what 7 Remake is also playing on. I believe fully. Everyone's talking about like time travel, and Rebirth is a separate timeline or a separate dimension. You know, when we saw like Tifa and Aerith and Barrett and Red like dead on one side, it's like they've gone to another timeline. I've said I don't think it's any of that. I think that what 7, and the reason why it ties to this, because it's very similar to the ending of 7. That was extremely ambiguous. And yeah, even though Final Fantasy 7 is my favourite, I still hate the ending. A lot of people calling me out on that. I don't like the ending of 7. I want the 7 Remake to end differently. And in fact, of 7 Remake Part 1, the way it has ended differently was exactly the spirit body. Like we saw in OG how big a thing this was. Cloud would often come out into ethereal form. As a little boy at the bottom of the Temple of the Ancients, or even go tumbling out of his body into the northern crater, go through the livestream channel, fight Sephiroth. That was there in the original, and we've just seen it in the remake. After the Whispers get destroyed, we see freaking Cloud go up through the livestream and stand at the edge of creation with Sephiroth. He ain't actually up there. It's his spirit body. And even like arguably going through Destiny's portal, we don't know if that's their physical bodies, their spirit bodies. And what that does is it opens up a whole other avenue of potential story changes and pivots. And 7 isn't the only one to do this. We've seen numerous Final Fantasy do it. I mean, even the last mainline, Final Fantasy 15, where do you think Noctis was in those 10 years? His spirit was in the crystal. When he was floating in front of Bahamut, it was his spirit body. That same concept is exactly what led to Arden coming back, Luna Freya resurrecting. This is all Dawn of the Future DLC. And Yoshi P has said that they're considering DLC, right? And I gotta say, I know I'm huffing Copium, but I'm so dissatisfied with the ending of 16 that frankly, guys, I'm gonna say it, I want a Dawn of the Future style pivot. Something that totally overhauls, recontextualizes, adds the weight, the meaning, the profundity, rectifies all of the fucking problems that 15 did, because Dawn of the Future was going to do it. What did we not have enough? Luna Freya. We didn't get to actually fight Bahamut, and Arden didn't get the resolution for kind of mistakenly being vilified by the whole world and by the 113 Lucis Kings. Dawn of the Future was going to do all of it. So what I'm saying is, it is very possible for Square Enix to do a DLC this way. They're total overhauls. Now, Again, whether this is the style of DLC that Yoshi P is talking about, is considering, has said that they're waiting for fans' reaction, feedback, to see how they reciprocate to and respond to the ending of 16. I honestly think, guys, that they have put some story elements in here in the eventuality that they do the DLC. I don't think it's just a Yoshi P decision. No, he said he wants the story to be complete, fully rounded, not dragging fans along, with a massively stuffed and over bloated DLC structure. But I don't think it's only Yoshi P making that decision. From like a creative and an integrity standpoint, I genuinely believe Square Enix are no longer greenlighting DLCs until they get a strong sense that it's going to do well, it's wanted, it's needed. Forspoken has just flushed $100 million down the fucking wazoo, making this year's fiscal income for Square Enix 85% lower. Their operating income has taken an 85% nosedive. Now, they've said that 16 is actually selling really well and it's kind of holding up that big janky bog of stank flop, but just about and not really. And Forspoken has got the In Tanto We Trust DLC coming. Just more money flushed down the toilet. And this is kind of what happened with 15. 15 did really well, but the DLCs, no one was going to keep buying that many DLCs. And the project lost appeal and fans fell off and they weren't buying them. And then that's why they cut it after episode Arden. That's why they cut Dawn of the Future, which was going to be the most significant rectification to the story. And the way that that was enabled to happen, characters were coming back from the dead. Lawrence was coming back from the dead. Luna was. It's because there was this spirit aspect. God, Bahamut, he was controlling the crystal. And within that crystal was an interdimensional space in which powers over life, spirit, soul, and creation existed. And we have the same concept, the same possibility. Again, I'm not saying whether I want this, guys. I'm not in that I want everyone to live camp. I'm just realizing, shit, you guys were saying Joshua's alive. You've actually got some freaking points, because diving right back into it, that was a bit of a detour. We know that Clive, in those few moments, he had Ultima's power. Not just the Phoenix, but he had Ultima's for a few moments. And Clive knew that his vessel was, well, while I've got this power. And in that moment, Clive made some very core and key decisions. Of course, one of them was to end dominance magic bearers, reform the world, delete magic entirely. And the other one was to do that spell on his brother. Now, we can assume he had the powers of Ultima, a god. He became Logos at that point. Mythos was always what Clive was going to become if Ultima took Clive's vessel, and it was Ultima's will that was in control. Logos was the merge of Ultima and Clive's vessel, but with Clive in control. And that's why Logos is described as a blasphemed version of God, a false god, but nonetheless a freaking god. Clivey boy became God. And what God has power over life and death and creation itself. He had everything we can assume in his tool belt that Ultima had. And what was it that Ultima wanted? Well, we know that his people, and there was a people, is two things at the same time. There was an Ultima collective that makes it sound kind of like a singular collective, but within that collective there is individuality, clearly. I'll talk about this more in my Ultima video, but there's Ultimalius. There's the various ones that went into the Mother Crystals. There's the various ones that kind of started becoming the essence of icons. Yeah, we saw the one that went into Joshua's chest. We saw the various rogue hooded guys that showed up at different areas. What we know is that of the race that Ultima once was, 16 Ultimas survived. That was the number, 16 Ultimas. And the way that they survived is very, very key. They were able, they found a spell, they found a way to get rid of their physical bodies. And actually, quick lore detail, we know of where Ultimalis's main physical body was. It was in interdimensional rift, the infernal icon that we fight at Drake's spine. That was the cast off body of Ultima. So it is physical. There is a corporeal element. Of course, they've just been in spirit form. Some of them in the Mother Crystals, trapped in there. So they had the power to separate corporeal body from spirit. And what kind of allowed them to do this? It was Origin. Origin was a ship, a technology that they created that was more or less like an airship / Mother Crystal. And we don't fully know what this ship, because that's what they call Origin, where it came from. If it's a ship that actually like flew or sailed from parts of Valisthea, or actually came from out of space, whether it came from Metia. We don't actually know this detail yet, but what we do know is that they did it and they found Valisthea and they founded it because the blight was creeping up on their back. Using magic, their race was falling to the blight the same way that Valisthea is, and they needed two things to save themselves. Cast off their physical body, and they needed the power that Ultima naturally has to be able to re-raise his kin, but he needed a strong enough vessel. He needed to get back into a corporeal shell to be able to cast the rays, and that's why he created mankind. That's why he laid the Mother Crystal system out, the icons. It's even why he put the arete stones, like the training stones, so that mythos would be trained. Give Ultima the form that once he had it, he would be able to cast the spell Raise. Raise! Shit, I saw some people posting this, guys, like, Clive cast Raise on freaking Joshua, and I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you saying? And I went into the lore, and the first thing I saw was like a very ambiguous Ultima post saying, yeah, like he wants to raise his kin. Raise them back, restore them. It didn't actually like specifically talk to raise as a spell until it did. The main big final spell Ultima was looking for was raise. And what was raise going to do? Two things. It was going to raise his kin that he has at some point called brother. You remember in that final scene by the Nexus, when the Ultima that was in Joshua's chest comes out, he said, welcome home, brother. I think it's cool that they called it brother at that point. So that's one thing. Raise a brother, as well as get rid of the blight entirely. That was what Ultima wanted. And is that not exactly what we've just seen Clive do? Go touch his brother's bleeding chest and delete the blight from the universe. Now the difference is that in Ultima's version, magic would have still stayed in the universe. Essentially blight-free magic. Clive did away with it entirely. But the fundamentals are still there. Clive could easily have raised Joshua at that point with that spell. So the question becomes, why didn't we see him come to life? We didn't like see Joshua come alive, like physically happen. And even if he did bring him to life, did he bring him to life just to instantly squish him? Because of course Origin exploded, a big old crystal crumble happened. Well, I mean, obviously Clive was able to wash up on the shore somewhere. Maybe freaking Joshua was able to just wash up on the shore. I kind of feel a little bit doubtful that Joshua, in like the form he had, because he just handed over the Phoenix and the curse was getting him. I feel doubtful he would have survived Origin explosion. Because, you know, Clive could have, because he would have had the last remnant powers of a god in his freaking body that, no, Joshua wouldn't have had. Some people have said that, you know, the spell that he casted more than just raised Joshua, it also rejuiced him, because he phoenixed off, basically. Joshua went into Phoenix form and he flew out of Origin. Well, I mean, that's a bit skeptical as well. Did he not just hand over the power of Phoenix to Clive, like, fully? Also, have we not seen, you know, especially when we had to fight Jill at the start of Final Fantasy XVI, that once a dominant has kind of gone past their depletion point, they can't prime out again. After that whole Tri-Disaster showdown and how like wounded Joshua was, there's a big argument to say there's no way he could have gone Phoenix, a lot to say he couldn't have gone Phoenix, and a lot to say he couldn't have survived Origin. So why raise him? And if he did he just get yeeted again? Any of these things are possible, guys, but here is my theory. Spirit bodies. Spirit bodies. Like I just said to Brie, I reckon Clive did something on a soul level to Joshua, because this is, just like it was big in 7, it's also been very big in 16. It's just been a lot more elusive, seductive, and unobvious. Not only do we know from Ultima that, you know, his spirit can be separate from his physical body, we've also seen that happen with our human characters, specifically with Clive. In that Typhon showdown, Sid threw the big old bolt to yeet Typhon, which what was an Ultima form. Ultima took on another persona, another manifested form. I think that's what it says in the lore. And he was getting pushed back into the other space. that other space that we've been in numerous times. It's where Clive fought his shadow self. It's the space that Joshua and Clive in when we went on Ultima story time in Drake's Spine. That was literally called an interdimensional rift. And when Typhon was getting slurp back in, what did we see him do with his hand? I mean, I'll just play it. Look at that, you guys see it. He grabbed like an essence of Clive, his spirit body, yeeted it in, pulled it in with him. That's where that showdown happened. So it is possible with the power. That's another confirmation that not only can Ultima separate his own body from spirit, he can do it to others with his power. And we've also learnt that the technologies of Ultima can do it. We found out that the Arete stones, as well as the obelisks, the obelisks are actually an extension of the whole technological system that funnels ether from the planet to the crystals. It's an ether channeling point, which is how we are able to TP to them in the world. That's the lore explanation for it. And Clive is unique that he activates this technology, the stones, the obelisks. Even before getting Ultima's power, Clive is connected to Ultima, being mythos. He gives Clive the keys and the access to essentially this technology that can teleport spirits and ether, like ether, the very foundation of life, life force itself, all around the world, to any point. So putting all of that together, is it not highly possible, if not even likely, that what we saw was Clive not doing something to Joshua physically, because we didn't see him respond. We don't really have a logical explanation of how he'd get off Origin. What if he sent Joshua's soul, intentionally or unintentionally? Again, it could have just been an act of love, but it actually had a tangible, visceral effect and sent Joshua's soul to a safe haven. Could have sent it to a mother crystal, because there are some mystery mother crystals. I'm going to cover this on the next video that we don't have full answers for. Mother crystals are also connected to the void and can kind of transcend space and time in interdimensional rifts, points between reality itself, don't necessarily conform to the laws of reality. I've just seen the time of this video, so I'm going to kind of wrap it out here. I'm going to give a lot more supporting evidence in the next video. I've got a lot of juice to kind of back up that 16 seductively weaved for us that was kind of pointing to spirits, souls. They are a thing in this game. I think not only could there be a reincarnation thing happening going on, I also think legitimately, guys, there's a massive segue for a DLC. I'm done huffing copium. I will just say, let me know in the comment section what you guys think just on this premise alone. Did Joshua live? Did he write that book? If he has got out physically or in a spirit form, where could he have gone? Where could he have ended up? Do you think there could be a DLC? Will it be with Clive, or could it be through Joshua Rossville? Like, this is just my brain canon going on. I wanted to get your guys' opinion, so I'll quickly show this poll off. Here it is. So I asked you guys, do you think Square Enix would do a DLC? And do you want it? So 70.4% of you said they will do one and you want one. 6.5% said they will do one but you don't want it. 9.5% said they won't do it but you do want it. And 13.6% said they won't do a DLC and you don't want it. Curious. So the majority of you think they are going to do it and you want it to happen. See, I'm either a mix of that or they won't do it, but I do want it. Either way, I want it. I'm just a bit 50-50 on whether they're going to actually do it. And even if they do it, is it going to be? Because again, a lot of people think there can be nothing. Nothing. It's not possible because Clive deleted magic from the world. He ended the crystals. He ended the legacy of magic and bearers. So anything that they do DLC has to be backwards facing. You know, a Dion backstory or a Sid backstory that may be able to contextualize something on the end, but by and large, it's not going to do that. I think that's what a lot of people are expecting with the DLCs, but honestly, guys, looking at some of what could be remaining in the plot and like just weaving together what could be happening with fucking Joshua. We're going to see more of this in the next video. I think there's a high possibility we're all going to get faked out on this and that a DLC will come. Because if they do DLC, the thing is, I do want it to be significant. I want it to be impactful. I don't necessarily just want character episodes that kind of just skirt around the outskirts, fluff pieces, really. At this stage, based on the ending, I want something, like I said, on the level of a Dawn of the Future pivot that rectifies changes, overhauls, totally flips the table on this kind of very unsatisfying ending. I felt that the ending of 16 was really rushed. You can feel it in so many parts of the game, not just the ending itself, just the whole latter sections of it. It honestly felt like the developer was running out of time. They were cramming, they were shoehorning, they were skipping, they were skirting, and it just did not live up to the quality of the first 50% of Final Fantasy 16, in my personal opinion. I don't know what you guys think, let me know. But anyway, I'm going to go straight in and record the next section of this video. Be sure to follow on to it after the video if it's up and loaded. But thank you for watching, guys. Until the next video. Go. Oh, my broken hip. Yeah, I'm getting too old for this nonsense. Ooh. Oh, my bloody... I think I've ripped my groin.